Hi everybody, I was exploring yesterday for the new version of OpenStudio and I found a new feature that is about using Python measures, and this is awesome. It was written by Julia Marek, and this is going to change the way that you can use OpenStudio. And in fact, as you can see, if I go here to measures and decide to create a new measure, I'm gonna find that I have now Python as measure language. But first of all, I have to learn how is the SDK in Python for OpenStudio. So I decided to make this learning with these videos, and finally we can create a measure or some measures using this language and OpenStudio. And this is interesting also because I was using Ladybug to create my geometry to use in OpenStudio. But using the Python SDK of OpenStudio is also a way to create the geometry. So it's a good way to start creating some geometries that could be easily in many buildings where there's no complex geometry to develop, and you don't need an special graphical software to use. That is the mainly problem of using OpenStudio, that you have to have a SketchUp Pro. So let's start. First of all, we're going to install the package of OpenStudio for Python. So we're going to use the command pip install OpenStudio. Once we have installed, then we can now enter to Python and loading our package of OpenStudio. Import OpenStudio. To create our model is going to use this function. OSM is the name of our model, and that's going to be equal to OpenStudio .model.model. There you go. We have our new model. We can use print OSM to see the text inside our file. Now we're going to create an space, but first of all we have to use the vertices of our floor, and then we're going to extrude it to create all the space. Remember that the vertices have to be clockwise. So we're going to start with a simple cube, 3 by 3 by 3 meters, and we're going to use a function named point3d to specify that is a point in our geometry of OpenStudio. Point 0 equals, now we're going to use OpenStudio utilities geometry point3d and the coordinates of our vertex, in this case 0, 0, 0. Now we create our second point, point 1, and remember it's clockwise, so the other one is going to be 0, 3, 0. The point 2 is going to be 3, 3, 0, and the point 3 is going to be 3, 0, 0. Now we can extrude the surface created by these points using the function OpenStudio .model.space.from floor print. We use our coordinates point 0, point 1, point 2, and point 3. The height we're going to extrude it 3, and the model where we're going to be saved, OSM. And there you go. If we use print OSM, we're gonna find now all our surface created and our space. So let's go into save our model, osm.save. Now we're going to name it model.osm. You can name it as you want. And true to override it, it exists. Now let's going to open it in OpenStudio application. Close without saving. And if we go into geometry, we're gonna find our cube 3 by 3 by 3. Okay, we finished this first video about how to create our geometry using OpenStudio in Python.